Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Get settled in. We'll give everybody a few more seconds to get into their seats, get their coffee and water and whatever else is needed. We'll kick off in just a little bit. So get comfortable and we'll start in just a second. All right, we're going to honor the time of the people who arrived on time and let the rest of everybody just continue to trickle in. First off, hi, hello, my name is Madeline Edlin. I am the product marketing manager here at EFI, the Equitable Food Initiative. And today we are going to be talking about making CAPS work for you, a practical approach to continuous improvement. But before we jump into any topics or really getting started, a couple of housekeeping things. We are recording this session, so know that it's recording and that it will be sent out via email in the next couple of days. So keep an eye out for that. If you had a coworker who wasn't able to join or you want to have this to reference on hand, you will have it in your inbox soon. And if you have a question throughout the webinar, feel free to add a comment in on your LinkedIn if you're watching via LinkedIn, a chat if you're here on Zoom, or using the Q&A feature if you're on Zoom as well. Just note the Q&A feature is anonymous, so if you would rather not have everybody know who's writing the comment, use that Q&A feature. All right, let's jump in. Today, we're going to be talking about CAPS or corrective action plans, which can often be viewed negatively, but can actually be part of an operation that practices continuous improvement. Today's discussion will focus on how CAPS can strengthen systems, communication, and workplace culture. And to help me really dive into this topic, I would like to introduce Julia Rivera, Senior Certification Program Associate, and Alexandra Martinez, Senior Marketing and Sales Associate here with EFI. So, welcome, you two.
Hello, good morning. Can you
Hey,
see me?
I can see you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I see myself now.
Okay, great.
Yeah, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Alexandra Martinez, and I'm the Senior Marketing and Sales Associate for EFI. Yeah, we're going to have really good conversations today about CAPS and audits. So thank you so much for inviting me to this webinar.
Of course. All right, there we've got Julia. I had to practice my skills of being the all powerful person and pull her in the webinar. So Julia, you are on mute, but after you want to mute yourself, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and your role here at EFI.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Julia Rivara. I'm a senior program associate on the certification team. Been with EFI for about a year now, a little over a year, and I manage all the systems and data on the cert side.
Yeah, you might have worked with Julia if you're part of an EFI certified program and you collect premium data. She does a lot of work in that. And Alexandra, you probably worked with her if you've come into the certification program within like the last couple of years. She does all of our sales. So just to kind of make sure we all understand where we're at in the world of EFI specifically, Alexandra, you being our sales expert, can you kind of walk us through like a quick and dirty little rundown of what it looks like for an operation to get certified with EFI?
Yeah, I'm going to try my best to do this quick. Usually I will spend like an hour explaining everything super detailed, but let's keep it short and sweet. So I usually call a three-step certification process, but the audit, that is the step, is going to have some little additional steps. So the first big step is the site visit. Currently, we're doing a site visit either virtual or in person, and this is going to help you understand better your operation, like sizing, needs, workforce. And with this information, we will be able to just share all of that with our training manager, who will be organizing everything that is needed to train your worker manager collaboration team. The worker manager collaboration team, or also called leadership team, or like every company can also have like different names for it, is the one of the most important steps of the EFI certification process. Our trainers will come to your operation to train this group or this team that is really representative of your workforce. So this team is going to have people from the front lines, but it's also going to have people who are directors and managers. We really want a super complete and diverse team. Once that team is trained, then we're going to start talking audit. The audit process needs to be complete during during peak season. We also recognize peak season as the moment where you have more workers in place. And this audit process is going to include some worker interviews, document review, and walking through the facilities that you're going to get certified. Once the audit visit is completed, then it's going to have an audit report. Our third-party certification bodies, SCS Global or the LRQA, are going to send you an audit report with the findings or non-conformances that they found during the audit. This is going to give you a moment to complete something that is called a corrective action plan, the reason why we call this webinar CAPS. And when these caps are closed, finally your operation will be able to get the certification. And yeah, those are the main steps on the certification process.
Okay, let me reiterate because it's so much. So
It's so
basically, I'm going to
much.
sum this down. We have a site visit where we send an EFI person to the operation to
Correct?
verify that they are who they say they are, basically.
Yep.
And then we have the worker manager collaboration team or leadership team training, audit, cap,
Mhm.
close caps,
Close
and then
caps.
the certification. And really, what we want to drill down on today is that corrective action or CAP process. And what we've seen over the 10 years that EFI has existed in what operations struggle with and what operations have like taken as a corrective action, turned it on its head and turned it into something that's amazing and a continuous improvement opportunity at their operation. So Alexandra, I'm going to ask you another question. Julia, you have lots of questions, so don't even worry. We'll get to you. When people think about audits, Alexandra, they often think about like this pass fail. There is a pass fail. We're in college again. Like, oh my God, we have to study for the test. How is the EFI audit different, and how can operations kind of reframe this idea of an audit into something that's actually an opportunity for learning and improvement over time?
I love that question because recently, actually, I had a conversation during one of the sales calls that were saying, like, what do you mean this audit is not a pass and fail, right? Like, their experience with other programs is that it's actually based on, like, what is the percentage that you pass? And if you
Right.
pass like 90% of the standards on that audit, then you are going to be like in the 90% percentile group or like
Right.
80% or like things like that. But one thing that makes the EFI audit unique is that it's not a pass or fail mechanism. The EFI audit does not end once the audit is completed. The audit process progresses into, again, what we are calling the corrective action plan or CAPS to follow the EFI's continuous improvement methodology and effectively close the non-conformances.
Yeah, I think we talk about this idea of like audit trauma within EFI where people are like so used to like think about food safety. You're like, you are either compliant or you're not. And then we're talking about something that's like a little more nuanced and we want it to be a moment in time versus this is the end all be all. This is a moment in time, a pinpoint to move forward and to find what you can improve on. So, Julia, okay, your turn. I'm going to pepper you. You are in the weeds of the data on a daily basis. At this point, we have 10 years of EFI data, scaling operations from small to extremely large, a few workers to a few thousand workers. What does the data reveal about the scale and complexity that different operations are managing day to day? What are they looking at? What are they working with? Tell us more.
Yeah, exactly. We do see that difference in size. I think scale is definitely one. We have a pack house that's as small as 30 workers, including management. And then we have operations that have reached 11,000 workers across multiple pack houses and fields. And we also see that we speak about certification and certified operations, which is a smaller number, but among those certified operations, we see over 400 locations. So fields, greenhouses, pack houses, ranches. So that is the complexity in itself. Um, I think that's one aspect of where we see that difficulty and those day to day that really makes it complicated and extremely complex. I
Mhm.
will say the other side we see a lot of complexity is in workforce composition.
Right.
The majority do have direct hires, but then we also have about 30% that have FLC workers, and then another, almost half have H-2A visa holders. So having that different composition of workforce really does make it a complex day-to-day management under EFI especially and EFI's management, because EFI standards hold the certified operations fully responsible for all workers, even if they're essentially from an FLC or through a guest worker visa recruitment agency. So that really does lead to a complexity in the day-to-day in management and within EFI standards. But what we have seen is people are successful whether they're 30 or whether they're 11,000. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that is something I used to have Alexandra's job where we were doing sales, and what I would see over and over is people are like, wait, we have to have FLC workers and H2A workers in
Mhm.
our worker manager collaboration team. Like that's wild. But really, through all of our programs, whether that's through ESIP and you have Grower Lab and FLC Lab, or all the way up through certification, we see this responsibility for the worker as a whole and bringing everybody in and everybody to the table. That's really
Mhm.
EFI's secret sauce.
See,
So when we look
exactly.
at all this data together, what does it tell you about where agricultural operations are investing the most effort in building stronger systems? Do you see a common thread? Do you see like one outlier? What are you seeing out there?
I think in general, for speaking about that, we see the continuous investment in EFI. So
Mhm.
84% of our operations, I love numbers. Sorry, I'm throwing a lot of numbers out there.
Oh, that's why you're here. That's
I know,
literally
that's
why
why I'm
you're
here.
here.
So 84% of our operations decide to recertify with EFI. They decide to reinvest after their first certification cycle. When I say first certification, it's that initial audit, two verification audits, and then the recertification.
Right.
So 84% is quite a high number of people who, after 4 years, say, yes, this is working for us. We want to continue making this work for us. We're seeing improvements. And that also goes in line with where we're seeing quite a bit of investment in training. Um, and I'm not speaking about the initial training, but these refresher trainings. Um, I would say every month, every other month, we get 1 to 2 requests for a refresher training. So that means an operations may be expanding to a new location and they want to add a worker manager collaboration team, or they've had some turnover and they want to retrain to make sure that that team is the most effective for the workforce. So that's where I see investment in terms of EFI, especially really saying this model works. We're seeing the outputs, we're seeing the impacts, and we want to keep reinvesting and making sure that our team is ready to make sure that they're representing the workers and we're able to continuously building these strong systems based on this model.
And I think it's really interesting, Alexandra, because I think often when people come into the EFI sales cycle, this idea of training workers is kind of a little bit resistant. And so then what we're seeing after time is people are like, no, it totally works.
I'll keep training.
Is
I'll
that,
just keep
yeah,
training.
yeah, is that something that you see, Alexandra, like that kind of resistance? We're like, this is like a lot of work. We need to bring in like FLC workers and H2A workers and direct hires. Is that kind of a pushback there in that initial sales cycle?
I think yes and no. It really
Okay.
depends on a lot of the times that operations reach out to me to learn more about the certification. They
Yeah.
already have heard from other operations
Mm,
about how the certification works. So they already expect me to talk about the worker manager collaboration team. And they're like, yeah, we know we have to do that. And it's okay, right? On the other hand, there is going to be operations who are like really new into
yeah,
certifications, and they're
right.
going to be like, why do we have to do it? Like, it's going to be a lot of effort, a lot of time, and like even money, right? Because it
Right.
really takes a lot of different resources to train your team. But the good news and what Julia is saying is that at the end of the day, when that commitment really happens and when everyone is really involved in that training, there are a lot of learnings and skills being developed that are going to not only help the people within the team, but your organization as a whole.
That's awesome. People, our reputation precedes us. People are understanding that. And then they come to EFI, there's going to be training.
Yes.
Getting
Yeah.
so popular, what can we say? Okay, Julia, back to you. Circling back, what can we learn from these common areas where we see nonconformancies in our audit data? What threads are there that have appeared like across regions, across time? We're pretty global throughout the Americas at this point. We've been around for a little bit of time. So what are we seeing commonly?
Yeah, no, this was exciting. When you invited me to this webinar, I got to go a little more into the data on the nonconformances and really find these trends. I'll start by saying on average, there's 9 nonconformances per audit. That changes a little bit depending on how long they've been in the program, et cetera, which I'll get into in a moment. But in terms of the common areas we're seeing nonconformances, I think there's 3 main areas. We're seeing it in the communication. So as we spoke about that workforce management, communicating to the different workers depending on the composition. So that's where we see quite a few, that communication, that dissemination of information. The second category we see quite a bit of nonconformances is training related to ergonomics and health and safety,
Mm, interesting.
which is a big portion of the standards, but making sure everyone's up to date, they know who to report to, and et cetera. But and ergonomics in terms of making sure that they're ready for work and safe and stretched, et
Yeah.
cetera. And then that third category would be the lack of a policy, if it's initial audit, or lack of enforcement of a policy. So there are quite a few policies that EFI standards require, but once they're in place, I think just making sure that they are implemented, which kind of leads me to the trends I see over time. I would say regions, I didn't find anything. I tried, but I didn't find anything in terms of regions, really any common threads. But in terms of time, I do see it again in threes. I like to think in threes, but you have kind of three phases. That initial audit, a lot of policies, the 15-minute break, the plan to pay the EFI premium. You have to work through all of those, get them all implemented, and
Mhm.
really build that groundwork for a socially responsible company. And I'd say it's really important to build that baseline that first year, which happens through these nonconformances. Then you have a little bit more maturity, you have a little more evolution. I would say that's where you start seeing in year, I don't want to give specific years, but 2 to 5, 2 to 6, you
Sure.
start seeing maybe more the worker manager collaboration teams established, they're starting to do things, but maybe not everyone knows about them. So that's where you'll start getting a little bit of the nonconformances with the worker manager collaboration team in terms of recognition. And then I call it my maturity level. So that's where you have operations who have been in it for a while, and they understand it. It's everything's functioning, and that's often where you see very few to no NCs
Mm.
because they're a well-oiled machine, as we like to say, and they're moving forward. They have all the compliance, all the policies, and they're really just making sure that the improvements are so small at that point, so the nonconformances really don't appear. Yeah.
And I think that's like exactly what we're talking about is that initial phase where it's like, hey, we have these caps, we have these things need to be in place. Maybe it's a like we have a bonus structure in EFI and
Mhm.
like the operation probably has never had a bonus structure. So maybe there's an NC that you need to come up with that policy and you have time to develop that. And that's where I think like that mind shift to being like, this is
Yeah.
what we need to do. How can we close it? And then we work towards that maturity. It totally makes sense. And it's cool that the data is showing that that
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Um, and I think also when people get that audit report, they automatically assume like something's broken. Oh my God, I have an NC. Like I've never done a bonus structure before. What is going on? So Alexandra, just if you could give me one thing that you wish growers or operations who are coming into EFI knew about NCs coming into an audit, what do you wish they knew about those NCs and findings during an audit? Does that make sense? I was kind of
Yeah.
wordy around.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
no, I get the question. That's a really good question. Like one thing.
One thing.
I wish growers, suppliers, operations in general knew that like a non-conformance isn't a sign of failure or like as you say, like a broken system. It's more like a diagnostic tool, right?
Mhm.
Like this is something that maybe we're failing in, but we have the opportunity to
Mhm.
be better at this, to fix it. So when an auditor finds a non-conformance, they are simply handing you like a roadmap for
Mm.
continuous improvement and giving management and workers like a concrete opportunity to solve those problems together, right? Because it's not only about managers solving everything or workers figuring out, it's about everyone working together to solve that.
I love that reframing as a roadmap. Like, here's your roadmap to be better. Be better. Okay, a follow-up question. What separates operations who use CAPS as that roadmap, as that improvement tool, from those who just see it as like, oh my God, another task, like another checklist, another roadmap. Oh my God. How can growers build continuous improvement into regular operations instead of going into like audit mode once a year?
Yeah, this is big. This is very cultural actually,
Mhm.
because operations really need to buy in, like the EFI idea of continuous improvement and worker engagement at all levels for the same reason that I just mentioned, right? Like we all can work together to make things better. For example, when a non-conformance is identified, it shouldn't cause just panic in the operations. It shouldn't be like, it was your fault or it was this team fault or something like that, because like that learning is also going to provide tools and mechanisms to fix it, to improve it. And
Mhm.
with the worker manager collaboration, team representation. They also have some new skills and abilities like problem solving, communication that are going to help you modify or change that. And like as Julia said before, most common nonconformances are related to communication issues, right? But if the operation really has work into engaging workers at all levels, this communication gap is going to start closing. Like the longer you engage workers, that gap is going to start closing. So year after year, you're going to see that those non-conformances in communication are going to start to reduce, right? This doesn't happen from one day to another. It
Right.
really requires that embracement of the culture of continuous improvement. And like everyone should be ready to take on a challenge and bring up solutions.
Yeah, I like that point too that you made of like it's not an overnight thing. Like this might
Yeah.
take a little bit of time, and that's totally okay and something that we expect. A lot of moving an entire culture takes time. So Julia, back to you. CAPS, as we've said, are part of the certification process, but
Mhm.
they can also create values beyond compliance, as we've kind of alluded to. What operational improvements have you seen come out of the CAP process? Anything stand out in your data sleuthing?
Yeah, I think for me, and kind of building on what Alexandra was saying, it's the way you look at a cap. So the people who take the time, our caps require that you do the root cause analysis, and we've seen real, true operational improvements come out of a cap process is when that's not rushed. So when the
Mm,
time is taken to look at what is that root cause, why was this a nonconformance, and really understanding the why is so important. And instead of just saying, let's fix this so we can move on, but understand that why, taking the time discussing it, and then finding those preventative measures to not continue to do it. That's where I've really seen the improvements. I think in policy, where I've seen the operational improvements, creation is great. Like the existence of a policy is great, but if it's sitting in a binder in an office somewhere, that's not really helping the culture moving forward. So seeing that implementation of policy, seeing pictures of people stretching, I know it sounds silly, but it really is so effective in terms of repetitive motion injury. So seeing things of that nature, and bringing in that culture really has, I've seen it in the caps, I see it in the evidence, of those improvements. Another one we saw was something so small, but it came with the manager collaboration team having much more communication and feeling safe to bring issues.
yeah.
And people were complaining about where to put their backpack. Where do we put our backpack? I know a lot of Latinos, they don't like their backpack on the floor, right, Alexandra? So
Yeah.
it's a whole thing. So they just adding hooks outside of one of the areas of the pack house. And that was something that made workers happier. It gave them somewhere to put their things in a safe place. But more than that, it also led to operational improvements and compliance. There was no
Mhm.
emergency exits blocked with personal things. There was no emergency path blocked, the health and safety nature of having personal items in certain areas. So it's something small, but it really came out of of an initiative of a cap of a nonconformance that the worker manager collaboration team wasn't communicating. So we've seen really cool improvements come out of it.
It's really cool too to talk about like how those small things, you're like, it's hooks, like it's not that big of a deal, but how that can also kind of snowball into those
Yeah.
larger culture shifts and like more buy-in from employees, which leads to less turnover, which leads to like it just all builds on itself. And so that's a beautiful illustration. Alexandra, what role does leadership play in creating a culture where these findings are treated constructively, where we're adding hooks? What is leadership doing here?
Leadership is huge, and I don't want us to focus in leadership as only like coming from managerial people, like those who have decision-making power, but like really the success of the EFI certification in every operation is completely tied to leadership engagement from again every single person in the place they are. So for an operation to move beyond the checking boxes in an audit towards please make a line every time I say this towards a culture of continuous improvement, upper management must really, thank you.
Yeah.
Upper management really must provide more than just permission, right? Like it's not they only saying, yeah, we are going to do this, we're allowingly. It really, they really need to provide like a vision and a support in the operation across all levels of the company. So when upper management approaches EFI's audit with like a growth mindset, they
Hmm.
set the standard for how findings are handled, right? Once again, instead of saying like, this was something negative, this is your fault, pointing fingers at
Right.
people, it's really important again to look at it as something that they can improve at. It's a way to create this roadmap for
Mhm.
improvement. It doesn't need to be fixed immediately. There are a lot of things that actually need a process, a big process,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's okay, right? It's important just to recognize that roadmap for improvement. And speaking again about leadership, it goes back to the worker managing collaboration team. People who are representing their colleagues in this team also have a really important role of leadership because a
Mhm.
lot of the great ideas come from this team or like from other colleagues talking to people in this team and being able to speak up their minds, their conflicts, their challenges, their ideas, their dreams. Um, so, it is important that people actually has the willingness to grow and learn and change and see their participation in this team as an opportunity to make things better at work and not only as an obligation because someone asked me to belong to this
Right.
team.
Right.
So, at the end of the day, it's really important that the leadership creates like what is called a psychological safety
Mhm.
for workers to be able to not only engage transparently but also communicate transparently in every
Right.
process.
No, I think that's a great point. And it really kind of puts a bow perfectly on everything we've been talking about and your guys' expertise here. So I'm going to transition us into question and answers. So audience, if you have any questions, feel free to pop those in. Not too late. We have a few minutes left to go over. We're gonna pop one in here, Alexander. I think this one's best for you.
Okay.
What's one practical thing operations can start doing tomorrow or today to strengthen systems before their next audit cycle?
Documentation,
Okay.
100%. That's what I will say with everything. I have seen that a lot of companies are already doing the right thing, and they like can easily be in compliance with a lot of our standards. But if they don't have a way to prove that to the auditors, then it's just double work. So if you're already
Mhm.
doing something good, make sure to document that. I don't know, minutas, record meetings. There are so many different ways, but documenting things is going to save you time for the audit, and it's also going to help you understand where you are and also where can you go with that.
I love that. I think that makes so much sense. We hear it a lot from growers, especially who have been around a long time, like, we're doing these things. We're like, great, just document it. We want to know about it. Julia, shifting over to you. What advice would you give growers preparing for their next certification or recertification process?
So building on what Alexandra just said in terms of documentation, using the tools at their disposal. We have an internal audit tool that has every single standard. It creates your personalized list of indicators that you'll be audited to. So going through that and seeing, do I have all this? Am I ready? Do I have the documentation ready? When they come next week or next month, if it's unannounced, do I have all of that in a file on my computer or ready to be printed, whatever I can? So to make it really easy and available. I know like a good example is one that's non-conforming quite often, essentially in those initial audits or when a new FLC comes on board, is you need an action plan for guest workers to lead towards better gender equity. And that's a
Okay.
policy that most people don't have. It's very
Right.
specific. But if you use the tools that are available, you see that on the list, you say, oh, what's that? If you don't know, I would say use the tools, but then also use EFI's resources. Use the certification team. If you come across that while you're preparing for an audit and you say to us, we have no idea what this is, we can help explain it to you and help you get you ready for that process.
Yeah, that's our job and we like it.
It's their job.
So, really quickly, we have like 30 seconds left, but if both of you could answer this one, what does continuous improvement look like between audits?
I will say that it actually looks really different in every operation. I don't want to put pressure in like small organizations versus big ones with more resources. I think as long that you see that your workforce is starting to say like, hey, I saw this and I don't think this should be like this, or like, hey, maybe we can create this new thing, that's already a really good process because that means that your workforce is starting to feel more confident, more comfortable, and more safe in speaking up. And that's such a huge step, no matter how big your organization is. So that's one little example that can happen in any organization. But like bigger things is like work for the worker manager collaboration team has come up with really great ideas of like putting coolers of cool water in really close by places. I know that requires money, but it's just really cool how they are the ones who understand what they need and
Right.
how they can bring up those things. And then at the end of the day, the company can make it happen. So everything just will work better for everyone.
Love it. Julia.
I think for me, it's continuous improvement between audits is not looking towards that next audit. It's
Mm,
it's everything Alexandra said, but also it's not it's doing things because you want to improve and there's a will to improve and not just because you want to make sure you're compliant in a year when the audit comes around. I think for me, that's what continuous improvement in this model looks like.
I love
Continuous
it.
improvement, check.
Check.
Little improvements every day. Before everybody heads out, I just want to highlight two upcoming webinars that we will be hosting, both with Whole Foods Market. From the Field Up with Whole Foods Market, we're going to focus on what field audits look like and field specific pollinator requirements for Whole Foods, and then staying committed to IPM with Whole Foods Market and what the retailer is looking for with their IPM requirements at the market side. So you can register for both of those with those QR codes there. They're coming up here in just a couple of weeks. And with that, thank you so much for joining. Thank you to Julia and Alexandra for joining me today and listening to me pepper you with questions. Always fun. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, everyone.